Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy WattsTV man, and today we have a reaction slash topic video. Today we are actually reacting to a Matt Walsh video. Now, if you guys watched my previous Candace Owens video, he was mentioned briefly, and I said I didn't know who he was, and at the time I genuinely did not. And one of you actually put in the comments that I should actually react to some of his content and check out his content. And so that's what we're doing today. But before we actually get into it, please do me a favor. Do not forget to share, like, and subscribe. It really helps out with the channel and it lets me know that you are rocking with the content. And do me a favor and do not forget to follow me on all of my social media platforms at WattsTV94. That is my Instagram, Twitter, and my TikTok as well. And also, please do not forget to join the Discord. I'll have a link to that in the description down below. Today's video is entitled, "There is no such thing as corn addiction." Interesting. But without further ado, let's just get into it.
Today, our daily cancellation brings us around full circle. We began the show talking about the efforts to place age restrictions on efforts that have been furiously protested and denounced by smut peddlers and smut consumers alike. Both groups having placed their own satisfaction far above our basic responsibility as human beings to protect children. And we end the show now on a related topic. Now, I make no secret of the fact that, as I mentioned in the opening, that I oppose across the board as a general principle. Yes, I want to see age restrictions put in place, but if I had my way, the entire industry would be dismantled, torn apart, set on fire, and burned to ash while we all gather together and dance around its smoldering corpse.
Jesus, very dramatic. So personally, I tend to agree that I think that corn should most definitely be age restricted. I think it can most definitely be damaging to an adolescent mind for sure. And looking back on it, a lot of us should not have had easy access to corn the way that we did. I wholeheartedly believe that it should be age restricted, I'm not going to go that far to say that the whole thing should just be dismantled. I mean, but if you disagree, that's completely fine. I understand.
If I could do this by banning entirely, then I would. As I said earlier, nothing but cyber prostitution and can be prohibited under the same pretense.
And keep in mind, I'm one of those people who thinks that prostitution should most definitely be legal. I'm not going to go into the specifics in this video. Maybe I could do that in a later video, but I can easily go on a rant that could last a very long time. And I'm not trying to have this video be extremely long. So if you're curious as to why I would like prostitution to be legal, I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Or if you want to see a video on that topic, let me know in the comments down below.
And for the same reason that prostitution is prohibited already in most parts of the country. But a general ban is not going to happen anytime soon, much to my chagrin, which means that we can only chip away at this demonic behemoth piece by individual people deciding to liberate themselves from its clutches. If we're going to land a blow, it will have to be landed by consumers deciding to respect themselves and value their own souls enough to do something else with their time and stop watching porn.
Jesus.
It's at this point that I'm often told that, well, it's not that simple. Porn users can't just stop. It's an addiction, just like being hooked on drugs. Literally no difference at all. That's what I'm always assured. I heard a lot of this same rationalizing on Twitter this weekend when the subject came up, and one commenter said, quote, "Do you think it's easy for those who are hooked on porn to just simply stop watching porn? Think again. It's an addiction, maybe worse than alcohol and drugs."
To be fair, I wouldn't have said that the addiction is maybe way worse than alcohol and drugs, because I feel like you can incentivize someone who watches a lot of corn and someone who's actually addicted to it. I feel like you can actually incentivize them easier than someone who is addicted to meth or crack or heroin.
Another agreed and said, "Matt, I think you're amazing, but you must not have experience with a loved one's addiction. You're right that an addict can just stop if you incentivize them to do so, but it's rarely that easy. It's so much more complicated than that."
So how willing a person is to take those incentives, I think, me personally, I don't know this for sure, and I'm sure there's a scientific answer behind this. I think you can get a person to stop watching corn way easier than you can get a person to stop doing crack or cocaine or whatever. Maybe not cocaine, maybe meth.
Another chimed in, quote, "The dopamine release from porn is worse than most drugs. You can't just stop. There are ramifications."
It's worse? I need to do some research behind this, but people are saying that the dopamine levels from corn is worse. But damn, much worse. If that's true, that is insane.
Many more where those came from. You get the idea. These are the kinds of things you'll hear anytime this topic is discussed. So is it true that is an addiction? Is addiction a real disorder? Now, typically critics of the industry will say that addiction is real because addiction has a negative connotation, and they recognize that is a negative thing, so they want to talk about addiction. Defenders of the industry will deny that addiction is real because addiction has a negative connotation. They refuse to recognize that porn is a negative thing.
I never heard a supporter of corn say that there's no such thing as a corn addiction. I've never heard that ever before in my life come out of the mouth of somebody that supports corn, ever. Like, if you think that, then yeah, you're delusional.
So I find myself on a lonely island because I am certainly not a porn offender, though on the addiction issue, I think that the porn offenders, have arrived at the correct conclusion, even if their motives are totally deranged. Meanwhile, the porn critics have the best intentions, but when it comes to this issue, they're not only wrong, but they are inadvertently making the problem worse. So what is addiction? The important point about addiction, as it's understood today, is that it is considered a disease. The American Psychiatric Association calls addiction, quote, a complex but treatable disease that affects brain function and behavior. The NIH calls it a disease that is, quote, a lot like other diseases like heart disease. It goes on to explain that addiction is a brain disorder. The Mayo Clinic also calls it a disease. As for the nature of this disease, the NHS on its website says this, quote, addiction is defined as not having control over doing, taking, or using something to the point where it could be harmful to you. So addiction then is a disease that takes away your ability to control your own actions. It is a dependency, a disorder. Now I think talking about any addiction this way can be potentially dangerous as you're entirely removing free will from the equation.
Okay.
But when it comes to something like heroin addiction, you can see where it might apply. Heroin takes over an addict's brain to such an extent that if they simply just stop taking it one day, they might actually die. I mean, they literally can't stop. Not all at once anyway. Their body depends on it. Porn is not like this. If you lose your internet connection for 3 days and you can't watch porn, you're not going to go into withdrawal. You're not going to break out into hives. You won't collapse on the ground in convulsions.
Wait a minute. To say something isn't an addiction because the withdrawals aren't as severe is not a good argument to make. If that's the case, I would really be interested in what he thinks about food addiction. Now, when it comes to food addiction, and when I say food addiction, I mean like sugar and highly processed foods. If you cut all of that out at once, your symptoms could range from depression, irritability, fatigue, headaches. Like I had a family member that used to drink a lot of sodas. Like he wasn't overweight or anything, but I had a family member that drank a lot of sodas. But once he cut them out cold turkey, he started to get headaches. And this was essentially him having like withdrawals from sugar. Now, if you're going to sit here and tell me that food addiction also isn't real, then you have lost your mind. All you have to do is look at my 600-pound life and you can tell that food is an addiction. Matter of fact, on that show, before they have their weight loss surgery, Dr. Now makes all of his patients go to therapy so that they can figure out why they have their food addiction, like what led to that. So yeah, again, I don't think that this is a good argument at all.
You're not going to have a high fever and seizures. You aren't going to have a heart attack and die. You'll be fine.
So when it comes to addictions, like all of these things give you dopamine hits, right? Like he said before. Also, I don't know if he's going to mention it here, but corn can most definitely lead to some sort of withdrawals, from insomnia to mood swings to depression. And we hear this time and time again about how men have been addicted to corn and how they can't necessarily like perform with their partner, even though they really want to. They would rather watch corn instead of like have intercourse with their partners, and then that can in turn ruin their relationships. How many times have you guys heard that story? I've heard that story so many different times. The comedian Bobby Lee said that he had a corn addiction to the point where he would rather like get off from watching corn instead of having intercourse with his partner. Also, maybe withdrawals can vary from person to person depending on how they get their dopamine hits. Like, I wonder how a corn addiction would affect me, considering I get my dopamine. Like, I have dopamine hits from a lot of different avenues. Like, for example, I can say that YouTube is one of my biggest dopamine hits because I'll make a video, it does well, it gives me some sort of gratification and it helps me to like keep going. Like, that is for sure a dopamine hit. So I'm wondering if having a corn addiction wouldn't affect me as much if I were to just stop cold turkey, because I'm still getting dopamine hits from these other avenues, if that makes any sense. I don't know. At this point, this is just me thinking out loud. This is an interesting conversation. Sorry.
You can go without it. You might be a little bored, a little bit restless, but you will be fine. You're not physically dependent on it. If I incentivized you enough, right? If you were incentivized enough, you could. So if I were, just to take an absurd hypothetical, if I were to offer you $1 million not to watch porn for a week, you could do it. Anyone could. Now, $1 million might be enough to help you break a heroin or alcohol addiction, but probably not. And besides, you'd still suffer the potentially fatal ramifications of going cold turkey off of those substances, even if there was $1 million on the table. In other words, a fat check could not instantly release you of a true substance addiction, but it could release you of your addiction.
I don't know. I feel like he can't comfortably say that, because that depends on how severe the addiction is. Like, you can't necessarily speak to everyone who is addicted to corn, and there's no way that you can say that everybody can just stop. It might be a little more severe for others. You don't know.
In that, like, you would with $1 million on the table, you would stop watching easily without any struggle, because the incentives are that high. What that means is that these addictions are not the same, because one is an addiction and one is not. The other is.
Just because addictions aren't the same, that doesn't mean that it's not an addiction. This isn't a good argument at all. I really don't understand. Like, I already gave you guys the example of a food addiction, but yeah, this is not a good argument, like, at all. I'm sure all addictions vary in some way, shape, or form. I feel like he has a very black and white view of addiction. And honestly, I can't say I'm really surprised, because I feel like a lot of people have just black and white views in general. Like, for example, like the whole Andrew Tate situation, a lot of people have a black and white view on what sex trafficking is. Very black and white.
Is a choice. It's an impulse. It's a temptation. You might very much enjoy watching porn. It might give you a dopamine hit. Everything you enjoy gives you a dopamine hit. That doesn't make it an addiction, though. Unless, of course, we've decided that literally everything is an addiction, which means that nothing is an addiction.
Like, I just feel like there's so much nuance that he's missing here.
See, that's the thing here.
That's exactly why I've been asking questions, because there's nuance to this entire conversation.
It's possible to define the term addiction broadly enough that you can include.
Oh my God.
Somebody sent me an article from a site called Medical News Today that defines porn addiction this way. Quote, porn addiction refers to an emotional dependence on porn that interferes with daily life relationships and the ability to function. So sure, if that's how we define the term, then porn addiction is a real phenomenon. But then, an emotional dependence that interferes with daily life describes literally anything that you enjoy doing too much. And in our modern age of materialism and overindulgence, that means we all have like 50 different addictions.
Possibly. by that definition, if I'm playing video games to the point where my life is being affected and my relationships are being affected, then yeah, that is indeed an addiction. You can be addicted to a lot of different things. Addiction does not solely come from paraphernalia. Who told you this?
Which means, again, that the term is effectively meaningless and functionally useless. We're using the same term to describe the meth addict lying on a cardboard box out on the street and the woman who spends too much on Amazon packages, or the man scrolling.
Okay, so that's all right. So that makes sense now. Okay, so his way of thinking, if it's not related to drugs, it is not an addiction. I would rather him just say that. He could have saved us 12 minutes. That's essentially what he's saying, because he doesn't even believe that shopping addictions are real, which is also an addiction. Jesus. Yeah, he could have just said, if you're not on drugs, it's not an addiction. That's all you had to say. We would have been wrapped this shit up.
The latter two cases are obviously not in the same ballpark as the first. The only thing we achieve by calling everything an addiction, by using clinical terminology to describe all sin, all temptation, all vice, is that we let everybody off the hook. We've removed choice. We have obliterated free will. Nobody has any control over anything they're doing, which, as we recall, is a definition that the NHS provides for addiction. When everything is an addiction, we all become pre-programmed robots, right? Victims of our own behavior. Our bad choices are like cancerous tumors. They are an affliction, a disease, something we cannot control and therefore cannot be blamed for. And that's exactly how the ashamed user has been conditioned to see his situation. He can't control it, he can't stop, so he doesn't. This is how everybody has been conditioned to view all of their personal flaws and sins and vices. And so we have become a society of pathetic weaklings swept along helplessly by the current.
Jesus.
Doing things, making choices, while telling ourselves that we have no control over the things that we are willfully doing right now. This is why we need to bring back a concept called simple but not easy.
But I'm willing to bet money that a person that watches corn every day, I'm willing to bet money that if they could stop, they would. I can't imagine someone who is constantly watching corn. I just really can't even fathom that they wouldn't want to stop. So if they can't stop, then what is that? It's an addiction. Just like how some people can't stop eating with a food addiction. Most, if not all, obese individuals do not want to be obese. You can say whatever you want to say about the body positivity movement, but I'm telling you right now, all of those people who saying, yes, I love my body, bitch, they do not want to be big, most of them.
Remember what that one commenter said? He said, you think it's easy for those who are hooked to porn to just simply stop watching? The answer is no, and also yes. I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's easy, but I do think it's simple. Hard things are not always complicated. Oftentimes,
wait. He said he doesn't think it's easy, but he thinks it's simple. Is that not the? Did this nigga just not say the same thing twice?
Things are not always complicated. It's easy, but I do think it's simple. Hard, but I do think it's simple.
Wait, my bad.
I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's easy, but I do think it's simple.
Yeah. I'm sorry, nigga. He literally just said the same thing twice. I don't think it's easy, but I do think it's simple. Yeah, you lost me with this one.
Hard things are not always complicated. Oftentimes they're very simple and straightforward. Running.
Huh? Okay, hold on. Let me let me hear his example.
10 miles is extremely simple. It's a very simple thing to do.
No, it's not.
It's also very hard.
What the fuck are you? No. The idea of you running 10 miles is simple. You actually doing it is hard. Those are two different things. He has obviously never tried to run 1 mile, let alone 10 miles before. That is not an easy feat. What are you talking about? Saying it, I'm going to run 10 miles is very easy. The idea of it is extremely easy, but doing it is hard. It is very hard. And again, there's a lot of nuance in that example as well, because I have asthma. I can't run 10 miles. Like, it is, I just can't. I cannot.
When it comes to the task is as simple as it can get. Just stop watching it. It's not making your life better. It's harming you psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. You're sitting there and watching someone else have sex on camera. Someone who's almost certainly on drugs, was probably abused as a child, may very well have been trafficked, could actually be a child. This is a desperate, self-loathing person whose dehumanization and objectification and despair you are consuming.
Making a lot of assumptions here, buddy.
You don't feel good about that, and you shouldn't.
Honestly, I'm willing to bet money there is a very, very, very low percentage of children and of people who are forced to do corn. I'm willing to bet that percentage is actually extremely low. Does it happen? Of course. It apparently it happened on Pornhub, but I don't think that percentage is as high as he thinks.
If you could go back and reclaim all of the many
And if I'm wrong,
hours you've wasted on and retroactively dedicate it to something productive and beautiful instead, you would. You would like to stop watching it. You'd like to be free of it because it's dirty and disgusting and unmanly and undignified.
Wait, did he just said people would like to be free of it? So is that him admitting that people can't stop watching it? I'm confused here.
And embarrassing and shameful. And you realize all that intuitively. You want to be done with it, which brings us to the good news. You can be done with it.
Sir, that is an addiction. What are you? This nigga, yo, he's literally admitting that this is an addiction. What are you talking about?
You can stop watching it. You can decide not to watch it and then not watch it, and that's it. You don't need any drug or any treatment plan or any special facility. You can just not watch it. And that's all. Now, this may sound like the least helpful advice of all time, but in many cases, it's the only kind of advice that means anything. If you want to do something positive with your life, the best advice, really only advice anyone can give you, is to simply go and do that thing.
Fuck out. Okay. No. This is terrible advice. This is dog advice. Just imagine someone is ready to self-delete themselves and they are so depressed. Imagine someone telling them, just be happy. Like, what are you talking about right now?
Sit around saying, I really wish I would do this. Then just do it. That's it. That's the only thing the world can tell you.
Oh, God.
Oh, you want to do that? Well, then go ahead and do it. But I can't. Well, yes, you can. But I can't. Well, okay. Well, then just sit there saying you can't. What do you want us to tell you? And if you want to stop doing something negative, again, the best advice and only advice anyone can give you is to simply stop doing that thing. I'm doing this, but I don't want to do it. Well, then don't. But it's hard. Okay, well, then it's hard. So just, it's a difficult thing. That's it. Endure the difficulty. That's it. And that's advice that you can follow with porn because it's not an addiction. It's a lot of other things, none of them good, but it's not an addiction. And that is why porn addiction, as a concept, is today canceled.
But guys, that was the end of the video. Please do me a favor. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Me personally, I thought this was an interesting conversation. I honestly just think he had a dog shit argument when it came to this topic. But yeah, seriously, I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. And do not forget to share, like, and subscribe as usual. Follow me on all my social media platforms and join the Discord as well. Link to that will be in the description down below. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.